Hey tribe, how are you? Today, what came through was to discuss discernment, silence, and self love, and how some of you might know that in the earlier manuscript, at one point, the Fearless Life Guide was called Love Unwrapped. And this really came off the back of this sort of seeming process of unraveling our density. And this is also, again, this is from study research of other practitioners who have written different books that are called different things, and yet in them are contained a very similar process, as it were, an unraveling of the limitations of our own mind. And as we unravel those limitations in our mind, what we do is we shift emotional density that we carry in the cells of our body. And so this process is something that requires discernment from within us. It's not about us necessarily discerning other people's journey. It's very tempting. I do it too. It's such a default for us to start to project out and try to mechanically manipulate or analyze or observe, and we all do it. It's not a bad thing. And yet when I'm coming back into the tribe energy and the fearless life guide, it always brings me back to the material and to the truth, or the purity of the material, that we are only the creator of our own reality. Okay, and we're not here to dictate to other people what they choose to create. And and so what often we are unwrapping are our own density in codependency with other. So so this is a big shift often, that we'll notice people ebbing and flowing in and out of our lives. And it's always, here's something that really I always have to remind myself of: I can only be responsible for my own heart. And really, truly, no one else outside of ourself can assess how we're working with our own heart, right? So people might judge us, but if we are already tuned in and we know inside ourselves that there's love, that there's compassion, that there's forgiveness, that there's no icky emotional projection, there's no bad vibes, there's no grievance. If we know inside our own heart, then no one else can take that away from us, right? And yet, part of our journey here as beings who are endeavoring to expand in greater light is that our sheer presence can trigger people's pain bodies. In Eckhart Tolle's language, our sheer presence can make people feel uncomfortable. It's not necessarily where we are on our journey, but it's just something to highlight to why we want to be implementing our self-love rituals, our personal love rituals, right? Why we want to be coming back to the discipline of our daily meditation, coming back to the discipline of conscious movement, coming back to the discipline of conscious eating, right? It's the silence, and have to kind of go to the slowing down. It's the And it really is the actual doing in this regard. The actual doing, and maybe we're not doing it yet, but it's something that we can visualize ourselves doing, that we can sit and be in silence for at least a couple minutes every day, that we're actually doing the our gratitude meditation every morning, and whether it's in our mind, heart, or whether it's down in our journal, that we're making a note of how this slowing down process, and how the attuning to more of our own essence, how that manifests in our lives and how that looks in our lives. And it's something that I'm very aware of, especially with us living in this age of information, and there's just so much information available to us. And the way we're, again, systematically trained to learn, and how even with all this spiritual manifestation stuff, we can watch lots of videos, we can read lots of books, and the actual embodiment just might take a little bit more time. And that's why it's important for us not to necessarily rush ahead, or why it's important for us to, as I'm saying this, I'm like, yeah, girlfriend, you need to practice that. Slowing down and being patient with ourselves, with our manifestation. And this is a big one as well, like not having to know. not having to know the answers. Be surrendered in your knowing, not having to have answers for people, not having to prove anything. Like that in and of itself is just so incredibly liberating, that we're not living vibrating this sort of desperation, right? Because if in essence, in any subtlety, there's like a trying. There must be something we're trying to prove. If we're trying really hard, we're trying to prove something. What are we trying to prove? Something, because if we're in that action belt, we're not in our knowing of self. We're not in our expansive knowing of we are the total creator. And that's where again the simplicity comes in. We can get so caught up in this, that, the other. This person's doing this. They said it the wrong way. And then we're just not tuned in. That's the all there is. The truth, the practice is tuning in and being here and being in that rested place. The simplicity sometimes is mind blowing. Actually, doing it in the moment is what the practice actually is. In the Fearless Life Guide, the point being is that our emotional body is always talking to us. It's just that often we wanna deflect those emotional feelings onto stuff out there rather than us introspecting, looking within, shape-shifting everything within and projecting it out. It goes both ways. Again, there isn't a right way or a wrong way. This is just a way for that my beingness felt into and then ended up writing about. And that's something I can honestly share with you. The process of the book is something that I've both unconsciously and consciously been doing most of my life. Owning my emotions, transforming them, choosing to think better thoughts, da 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 da. The actual kind of higher manifestation happened again within these last few years, which is where the life path is sort of taking off. Is that now my own inner teaching, I'm realizing in my life, I'm getting lessons from the book. So for me, I'm having to learn more about discernment, discerning energy, not just taking things at face value, going deeper, but in self with other, right? So, the layers of love keep kind of unwrapping and shining more onto my own perception of awareness. So it's a really beautiful thing, and I don't think we end anywhere. I don't think we suddenly get there. I don't think there's like this goal that you're all going to reach, but I think us just being here for one another. Okay, bye.